Alright, what is public health in general? Okay, so when we're learning about the first dot point, which is about improvements in Australia's health status since 1900, we're basically being like, what are the different models that the government used to ensure that Australia's health status improved, right? Because the life expectancy from then and now is like significantly changed, not only in Australia, but around the world. Okay, we're focusing on Australia though, but also for your information around the world. And it's basically due to this concept of public health in general, old and new. So first of all, what is public health in general? It's the ways in which governments monitor, regulate, and promote health and well-being and prevent illness, right? So you don't really need to know this definition, but this is just important to contextualize what old and new means. Back in the day, infectious and parasitic diseases were the leading cause of death in Australia and around the world in the 1900s. So we're talking like measles, smallpox, polio, TB, syphilis, typhoid, cholera, all of these really nasty diseases that, didn't really have any medications available, didn't really have any cures. So loads of people died and many didn't know how to prevent it in the first place. So yeah, it's really sad. Some of these have been eradicated, like polio, but some still happen today, especially in poorer countries. But in Australia, we're lucky to have way less incidents of these and definitely very few fatalities from these. But the main reason back in the day they were so deadly and so prevalent was due to the living conditions. Like, there was contaminated food and water often, and lack of safe sanitation and waste removal, and human waste removal. So feces and urine might contaminate your drinking water and food, and you would have these really nasty pathogens and bacteria and viruses entering through just contamination. So that caused a lot of disease, and obviously without antibiotics and things, people just died. Nowadays, though, infectious diseases contribute to way less deaths, and so do injury and poisoning and respiratory diseases, because we have found ways to ensure that the living conditions are suitable and less suitable for the pathogens causing these diseases to live in. Alright? So the first subtopic of public health is old public health. And it basically relates to government actions, so public health, that focus on changing the physical environment to prevent the spread of disease. So this was the really first government initiatives. It's sort of just like a phase in the government's initiatives in this first step towards preventing illness, right? Because until then, it was sort of just like, look, you guys are dying, but we can't really do much about it. Whereas once there became more of this shift towards old public health, it became more about the government is implementing their own actions to change the physical environment to prevent the spread of disease. Right? And some examples of actions taken as a part of old public health include providing safe water, strict quarantine laws, sanitation and sewage disposal, improved nutrition, improved housing conditions, and better work conditions. Right? So basically what these mean are, think about a really crumbling old household. It's just been rained in, blah, blah, blah. The issues that can arise as a result of this include that there might be mold growing everywhere, right? And that can mean increased risk for respiratory diseases and things. So think if there was mold and you inhale it, there might be a bacteria entering your lungs, causing pulmonary diseases, etc. Then if you have a house that's crumbling, literally the roof might cave in, then people are more likely to die as a result of injury. And same with sanitation and sewage disposal, is that if there's human feces and urine in contaminating drinking water and food supplies, there's going to be pathogens entering it and people dying as a result of diseases. So it's really good to at least know a couple of these really well so that you can explain, hey, these are the actions taken as a part of old public health, and this is how it improves life expectancy and health status in Australia. Alright, so first question is from VCAR 2021. Alright, so there are two things I want you to know sort of when you're tackling these questions. Number one, it's really good to have sort of like a rule of thumb time limit, right? So for HHD, it would be like 1 minute per mark for the exam. So working towards, like, you might not be able to do that right now, but by the end of the year, when you're like at your peak performance, you should be able to answer roughly 1 minute per mark. I'm not saying you would spend 10 minutes on those 10 markers, you might spend 15, and you might only spend 1 minute on like a 2 marker, right? But it's just sort of that general rule of thumb, it's averaging 1 minute per mark. The other thing I want you to note is, in HHD, especially recent exams, we've been getting a lot more of these really like complex graphs. So this one is alright, it's pretty understandable, but there are more complex graphs and also really long case studies. And like many subjects with case studies, you won't find that you have time to read through all of it during reading time. So the thing you should do is read the question first and then look at the case study, right? And it seems pretty, obvious, but the amount of times that, I myself have wasted time because I decided to read the case study and realized that I didn't actually need to know like half of that information to answer the question. So, and sometimes you won't need it at all, right? Unless it says in this graph or in this case study referring to the case studies, you often don't even need to refer to it. So read this first and then read this. So in this case, all it's saying is select one of the leading causes of death on the graph and describe how the actions from old public health can reduce global deaths. Okay, so you just have to pick one of these leading causes and link it to how old public health could have reduced global deaths from that. I personally would probably stick to communicable because the keyword is old public health, right? And old public health is really focused on reducing the spread of disease by changing the physical environment. So diarrheal diseases are often spread through like contamination, and old public health had a really huge focus on reducing them. The other thing is lower respiratory infections, okay? Because you're improving housing conditions could reduce like the amount of mold in the house, reducing the risk of lower respiratory infections, increasing the chance of survival, increasing life expectancy overall, right? So basically what the exam report says is roughly the same thing. Leading cause of death, diarrheal diseases, that's the one that this student has picked. And global deaths can be reduced by enabling access to sanitation and waste removal, right? So that's the action. By removing human urine and feces and containing it, the risk of contaminating drinking water or food supplies with pathogens is significantly reduced. Okay, so it's not saying it's gone completely, because there still is a risk, it's significantly reduced. This reduces the risk of, and that's like a really common phrase you should probably integrate into your answers, reduce the risk of. Because nothing is certain in HHD, it's sort of just, these are risks that we can manage and reduce. Of contracting and transmitting diarrheal diseases, which can protect vulnerable individuals with weak immune function, reducing global deaths. Okay, and it provided a really clear link to reducing global deaths, right? If you don't include those 3 words in your answer as well, you probably won't get the marks. And if you didn't say like a specific example of an action, like safe sanitation and safe sewage disposal, or improved housing conditions such as this, then you won't get the marks, okay? As you can see here, 39% got 0, and the average was 0.9, so it's like halfway there. But to be able to answer this, all you need to do is know the action area and know how to answer the question, all right? So it's 2 marks, and it can be easy to make a silly mistake, but as long as you practice these sort of questions, which are very common, you'll be able to get it.